So today we're going to be talking exactly about the step-by-step process and schedule that I follow, my sales guys follow, so that you guys can follow it too, to make sure you see the highest levels of success when it comes to cold calling. So first thing we're going to do is that we're going to talk about the exact process when it comes to the lead lists and Mojo, just so you guys can get into a good practice of that. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. So I'm going to bring up Reonomy as a first example. All right, we pull some lead lists from here. So everyone is able to do the same exact thing. I'm just going to show you how to pull a really quick lead list and what I would recommend highly. Brendan, because you're here with me live, I'm going to use you as an example. So we're going to use Kansas City. All right, let's just say we do the greater MSA. Rounding is 277,000 properties, but let's make some adjustments. What type of asset class do you target? We're going to do industrial warehouses real quick. Then we're going to go to owners. We're going to click includes a phone number. Sales date, I would say not within. I would say minimum 10 years, but for your first poll, I would always recommend you go down to like a 2000-ish range. Okay, so you're down to 2,000 properties that have not traded since the year of 2000, right? Because the reason why we do this is because we're looking for individuals who are older, right? We're trying to look for people who are in their, late 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, or, the later the better, because ideally that is going to be an individual who is probably most likely to sell. They're looking to retire is what we're looking to target, right? Obviously, we have 2,000 properties here. If you have the exports, you can pull the full 2,000. If you want to make an adjustment, what you can do is you can do something like 20,000 to, let's just say, 200,000 square feet. We're down to 455. If you wanted to get even more accurate, or just even maybe a little bit more of an ideal, maybe do 20,000 to 100,000. This might give you a better range. Anything above 100,000 is obviously going to be probably somebody who might be a little bit more sophisticated. The sub 100,000 might give you a little bit better of an ideal. So now you're at 376. You take your 376, and obviously I like to add on a few things like not built before, or sorry, not built after 2000s. I want someone, the property's got to be much older. This way, we know that they didn't like knock it down and build brand new. Tax brackets, ideally we want to look for properties. I know Kansas City doesn't have crazy high taxes, but ideally, we're not looking for properties that have like $1,000 in taxes. So I might do like a 10,000 tax minimum just to make sure we're targeting the little bit larger properties out in Kansas. This way, we're not targeting like little tiny baby properties that may have wiggled their way in there. Last but not least, I would say the only other adjustments that you could be looking at is when you go to sales here. You can also look at this entire meter, and I want to be targeting properties that when they did sell, they sold for less than like, again, maybe $50 a foot. Right now you're at 40. Obviously, you can keep going up a little bit just to, depending on your MSA and the quality of that market. You can keep going up. Obviously, you can see the reason why it's adjusted like this is because either they were sold for a very cheap price per square foot 20 years ago, or they don't even mark what they sold for 20 years ago. Long story short, this is not going to make much of a difference, obviously, but because now you're down to 35 properties, so now I can like adjust in other areas. So now I can remove things like tax amount. I can get rid of didn't really change much. The square footage in the building didn't change much. So anyways, you can kind of go back and forth. So you have either one, okay? So but those will be the majority of the lead criteria that I would pull. So let's just say that you went to, you hit apply, whatever it is. You went to export, you went to do this, right? So let's say that you went in here. I highly recommend that you label it something like Missouri, Kansas, city, MSA, industrial. Actually, here, I'll do that at the front here. Industrial. I always like to make sure that's the first thing I can see to make sure I know what I'm calling. Kansas City, MSA. I'll say not sold within 25 years. Can abbreviate, doesn't matter. Not sold within 25 years. Let's say 10K to 100K square feet, whatever. You get as descriptive as you possibly can to make sure you know exactly what this lead list is if you ever have to come back to it 6 months, a year, 2 years later. Okay. So let's say you click export, you pull it. Obviously, you want to make sure you have owner contact information selected. If you do not have the owner contact information selected, you're going to pull a lead list for absolutely nothing. So let's go into the next phase. I'm going to open up Mojo. So let me stop sharing for a quick second. Let's jump over here, log into the dialer. All right, we're going to click import file. All right, let's click share. Mojo, here you go. So on Mojo, by the way, to get to this screen, I just have way too many phone numbers that are disclosed, so it make it really difficult. But you click data and dialer first in the dead center of the screen. It'll say import file. By the way, I have the old view. You can see in the top right-hand corner, switch to new design. I have the old design. I've had this software for 10 years, so I just like using what I'm familiar with instead of having to familiarize myself with the same exact software, but looking pretty. I don't care. So anyways, you come over here, you choose your file. Let's say that we're going to do, anyways, doesn't really matter. We have a big auto repair buyer or two or three of them specifically that we've been prospecting for in New Jersey. So we'll choose a file just as a random example. We're going to use calling lists. So I like to just repeat exactly what I just said. So I'll do MO, industrial, Kansas City, MSA, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'll type it all out, right? So I'll click save. It's probably going to tell me I went over the amount of characters. Hold on a second. Anyways, I will, let's just do this one is specifically. This was an NJ auto repair slash test list. I'll click save. I highlight it. I click next. Now I've already selected this. I've already created a template. You can create templates. So all you're going to do in here is that you're going to make sure you click reported name, co-owner. You can do a contact name just to make sure I have as many people's names as possible to make sure that I try to get the right person. Property address. I add all the phone numbers. Typically, it goes up to 9 phone numbers that will be logged at most. In my notes, I like to have the link to the Reonomy website so I can just click it and it'll go and I don't have to copy paste an address anymore. Property type, I like to make sure that I can just see that the subtype in the building square footage. And then I will actually make this bigger. Anyways, then we'll click next. There you go. Okay. So now, obviously, it's not really that big of a lead list, but you can see there's one number on the do not call list. That's fine. 114 in the database. Duplicate phone numbers, bunch of them. But what we're going to do is we're going to import new and old. So basically, I always will select import new and old. The reason why we do this, by the way, is because, you might have, I've uploaded hundreds of thousands, if now really, I guess millions at this point, millions of contact records, okay? And obviously there's going to be a lot of duplicates, right? Like there's only so many properties in the state of New Jersey. Some people own 2 properties, right? So I might call somebody, John Smith, who owns 2 or 3 or 4 properties, and I call him on his multifamily, and then I never asked him about his industrial warehouse that he happens to own that he might be more motivated to sell as an example, right? So I want to make sure I always import new and old, finish an import. It'll go through the process. It'll be done in 5 seconds, and then we will be done. This lead list is already uploaded. So here you go. We'll do auto repair test list. Here you go. Okay. So you can already see that we have the auto repair list set up, 110 records, just like we talked about. We'll click power dialer and we're back, or, we are in business. Now, obviously, once you now made the calls, things like my script book are going to be very important to utilize. So if you do not have a copy of my script book, make sure you download it. It is in the SKOOL community. You just have to download it. And when obviously you're utilizing the script book, I would make sure I'd either print it or I'd have it on your screen in front of you. This way you can follow along exactly as I would. Okay. Now, once you have completed your phone call, let's say that you generated a lead. Okay. Let's say you're prospecting, you now generated a lead. I would pause the dialer. Very important part. I would pause the dialer because so many people do not do that. So many people, they get a lead and then they were like, oh, I'll collect this information in my notes. And then at the end of my calling session, I'll put everything in my CRM system. I do the opposite. What I do is that I prospect. I get a lead, I pause my dialer, I import everything into my CRM, and then I click start again when I'm done. Because I want to make sure I input all the information, set my task up, and then have that all done. So I don't need to think about this thing anymore, right? And I can move on to the next lead. So now everything is in your CRM. The follow-up task is set up. You're all set to continue prospecting. Rinse, wash, repeat. Next phase, obviously, when you're dealing with this type of stuff that I feel like people are seeing some challenges with are the following. One of which is most people, when they're prospecting, their biggest objections, they're not understanding how to overcome them. So I'm going to break down a few as an example. You have to read between the lines a lot, guys. Okay, this is why I prospect the way I prospect. The reason why I make offers the way I make offers. Our process is very, very specific to the way we try to run our business effectively. Okay. Jing says, does owner information have owner email or just phone number? You can add, there's a checkbox that also has an email in Reonomy. You can do that.
Because I'm trying to add an email campaign combined with a cold call. Be helpful because I can send them the email first before I call them, so they have my bio and everything. It's better than calling somebody out of blue. So that's why I'm asking this question.
Sure. Yeah, I
But
mean we've tested and trialed all of it. So yeah, I mean if you'd like to send an email beforehand, I think it's smart. I think Reonomy also has their emails. CoStar sometimes, CREsync sometimes. I'm not saying it's even accurate by any means, but you can definitely export it for sure if they have a record.
I found CoStar doesn't mostly has email. They usually has the phone number if they do, but not much
Not much
email.
email. I agree.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
agree.
I'm not sure about Craxy though. So
Yeah, the same exact kind of thing. Not as much. Yeah, but good idea. I like it. Yeah, so read between the lines, guys. Like, so I'll give you an example. Like today, while I was prospecting, somebody that I was on the phone with was like, "Yeah, I'm open to selling, but I'm technically negotiating with somebody right now." Okay, now I know this area. We're speaking for a good 5-10 minutes, and she says, again, I'd like to continue the conversation with our current client. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, try to wiggle their way into this deal. So instead of trying to wiggle my way into maybe setting up an appointment, trying to pitch her a listing, whatever, what I did differently was that I made her an offer. I threw out a number while I was on the phone with her, and I said, just to clarify, like, what kind of number did you get? She's like, oh, I don't want to disclose it. I'm like, are you at least north of X? I was like, is the price north of X number? And she said, yeah, it's like 2X that number, right? Or it's more than 2 times that number. So what I did, and the reason why I did this specifically, because a lot of people spend time with properties that are way too overpriced, sellers who are not super motivated, and they waste all this time, energy, and effort, which, in that scenario, I would be trying to work on a deal which I would probably have valued at maybe 60 or 70 cents on that dollar, right? If it was at $1 million, I'd be valuing it at 6 or 700 grand. 10 million bucks, I'd be valuing it at 6 or 7 million. So, like, good for them. If they want to try to sell it for more money, obviously they should have the right to do so, clearly. But at the same time, the odds of me selling that deal for that price is much lower, and much too many people do not see it the same way, which is they spend way too little time understanding and evaluating prior, and they just try to get a deal closed, or they try to, negotiate with the seller and trying to get them to see more of their point of view. And in my eyes, I'm like, listen, like, are you in this range or not? Right? Like, obviously, over time, you can work somebody down, but if they're already working on a deal, as an example, in this scenario, with somebody else at 2x the number that we'd be at, the odds of them working at my number is fairly slim. It's reading between the lines, really understanding like what's going on with the seller. Does the seller actually have interest in selling, or are they just saying, make me an offer, right? We've all had those people who say, oh yeah, Henry, thanks for calling me, make me an offer. Like, oh yeah, I'm not really I don't need to sell, make me an offer, right? So we get these types of circumstances all the freaking time, and I think that too many of us spend too much time with that person trying to craft the perfect offer, trying to gauge them and get them to better understand the value when they actually have no like interest in selling. So you're like trying to convince a girl to go out with you, right? Convince someone who doesn't like you to date you, right? And it's like it doesn't make any logical sense in my mind. So I think for those reasons, I like to try to just make some adjustments in the way we prospect, make some adjustments in in your scripting, right, while you're on the phone to try to have a higher likelihood of success with a client. I want to take the next 10 or so minutes. I want to make sure everyone understands the process as well. I'm going to dive into the schedule next. If you have questions, next 10 or so minutes are going to be more about scheduling. So if you have any questions about process, drop it in the chat box down below. So let's talk about scheduling. On average, for my teams, we work our morning meetings are done at between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the morning. So when their meeting is over, they will jump immediately on the phones. So for you, I would say, what time can I get to the office? If you want to drop it in the chat box down below, what time do you get to the office? If you work from home, what time do you get to the office? If you go to an office, what time do you get at the office, right? And the reason why I say that is because you want to have a starting time and an end time that's similar every single day. Like I like to cap my mornings and cap my evenings, right? I want to start time and an end time every day. So like my first meeting starts at 7:45 in the morning. My last meeting ends at around 6:30 p.m. roughly. Okay. And that's me today, not me, when I first started in the business. That's me today. After the team meeting, they jump on their calls. Now, when they're on their calls, they're going to be prospecting, and they try to get 2 new seller leads every single day. 2 new seller leads is they're going to be prospecting utilizing Mojo, and they will be prospecting for specifically seller leads. And if they happen to get any buyer buyer leads, great, right? Like, so it's like they're prospecting specifically a lead list like we just talked about. They are prospecting for sellers specifically. And if they happen to randomly come across someone who says, hey, I'm not interested in selling, we're obviously using the script where you'd flip it into a buyer, right? Completely respect you don't want to sell it, no problem whatsoever. Would you be totally against possibly buying another property similar to the one you have here at 123 Main Street? So they're prospecting for sellers. Seller focus only in the mornings, okay? We go for at least 2 seller leads each and every single day. My team knows what our quality of a seller lead looks like, so they'll continue to prospect until they achieve that record, or they go for around 3 hours minimum, okay? We have a 3-hour minimum requirement. Ideally, we try to get to somewhere between 200 and 350 minimum calls, sometimes depending on their follow-up, sometimes depending on other meetings that they might have. We've had guys that make 1,000 dials a day. Now, obviously, that's not 1,000 dials a day every single day, but I'd say somewhere between 300 and 1,000 dials a day every day, depending on how long you've been in the business, is probably a pretty healthy number. Now they've made their 3 hours of dials roughly. At a minimum, they got 2 seller leads. And by the way, they'll continue to call until they get their 2 seller leads. So if they go 5 hours, they still haven't gotten it, they were going to make sure that they're going to get back on the phones later that day. 2 seller leads a day is our minimum requirement. Let's say that they finished up by 12 noon. Now from 12 noon to about 2 o'clock, okay, because we have some afternoon calls as well, they will do all pure follow-up. So they obviously have hundreds and hundreds of leads, if not thousands of leads each. So for about an hour or 2 hours every single day, they're just going to do pure follow-up. So they've already gotten the 2 seller leads in the morning, right? 2 new seller leads every day. Now they're going to spend time following up with the seller leads that they've generated in the past, right? Making sure that they're constantly following up with those tasks. Nothing gets left behind. Then they're going to go into our afternoon meeting. We review any and all deals. I make offers on every single lead that we generate. They know exactly where to, come in at. Obviously, more information on that in our other programs. If you're interested in getting more information, all you have to do is DM me, and my team will take care of the rest. Okay. After our afternoon calls, they know exactly what to make an offer at. They have all the guidance that they need. But later on in the day, from now, let's call it 2:30, 3 o'clock, or whatever it is, 3:30, whenever the team call ends, they will then go into deal pitching, right? So they'll go into a 3-hour deal pitch session, which is essentially their entire job is to get 2 true offers a day. Right? 2 seller leads a day, 2 true offers a day. Pretty simple. You do this every single day, you're not going to have any financial worries. We say 2 leads a day, 2 seller leads a day, and 2 true offers a day keeps your financial worries away. That's it, simple. Those 2 true offers from those 2 seller leads they have, right? We are now calling up buyers constantly, trying to sell them on leads that we've generated in the past. We have this process every single day. So that means from basically call it 2:30, 3 o'clock, 3:30, whatever it is, they go into a 2-3 hour session of pitching deals. They try to get 2 true offers every day, and then we have a wrap-up session in the evening. This is how our team operates in regards to our scheduling. Now, Brandon, you said when you send offers after you get a lead via cold calling, are you sending those offers out on behalf of a client, or are you sending out an offer on behalf of yourself to fish out a price, present to a client, to a buyer client of yours? It depends on the situation, but a majority of the time I'm sending out an offer from myself. Now, obviously, I am an investor. My agents utilize me, and I utilize myself. So, like, I call as an investor when I'm calling for my own leads. My agents call as obviously as an agent, and they utilize me as their buyer. I am making an offer to legitimately buy it to get a gauge of their pricing. Also, is a secondary effect of making that offer, but we like to do that to gauge the motivation of the seller instead of waiting around for weeks to understand if we are in a ballpark or not.